Welcome to the Swipe Right Effect podcast, where we will be sharing with you the power to get unstuck by swiping right on yourself. Your host, author C.K. Collins, aka Kelly, gets personal with her guests, sharing stories of themselves getting unstuck with wisdom and guidance. Where do you feel stuck? Are you waiting to get your new life started after a big change? You've come to the right place. Kelly's book is available on Amazon and through your local bookstores. Look for the Swipe Right Effect, the power to get unstuck. Kelly's interviews with 10 friends from around the world unlock powerful truths to getting your new life started. So with that said, welcome to the Swipe Right Effect podcast.
Hi, welcome to the show. This is C.K. Collins, aka Kelly. And before we invite our guest on with us, I wanted to let you know about something I made for you. It's called a self-care scorecard. And it has 10 essential questions that every woman over the age of 40 should be asking herself. Do I have these skills? Am I taking care of myself? You can find that at ckcollins.co/self-care. ckcollins.co/self-care. Every woman should take this test. You should know if you're taking care of yourself in every way possible. All right, let's go meet our guest. Okay, well, let's welcome our guest. I'm very excited to introduce you to Bethany Dotson. She is a trauma-informed yoga therapist and relationship coach. She has over a decade of experience helping professional, high-achieving women heal anxiety, PTSD, codependency, and find their power, I love this part, and skyrocket their confidence after divorce or toxic relationships. She helps people communicate better, navigate conflict, and most importantly, co-create healthy relationships. She is a domestic violence and childhood trauma survivor who helps women triumph over trauma, break their cycle of emotionality of unavailable men, emotionally unavailable men, and attract the love they deeply desire. There we go. Welcome, Bethany.
Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation. As I was telling you before the show, this whole second season is about self-care. And part of what I believe self-care involves is relationships. And so I'm excited to talk to you about that today. And I do feel like patterns is kind of where I want to focus. And so I'm going to jump right in and ask you about that, unless there's anything else you'd like to share about yourself beyond the bio I read.
No, other than I'm really passionate about what I do. I mean, the first 10 years of my life, I grew up in an environment with a father who was who had bipolar, but back then we called it manic depression.
Mm-hmm.
And very passionate guy, very funny guy, very charming. Like if you think of like Ted Bundy, that was kind of my dad on good days, but was also very violent. And so I grew up, being in domestic violence for the first 10 years of my life, and that's all I really knew. And I spent a lot of my 20s and 30s trying to run away from that by achieving and people pleasing. And it wasn't until I started doing the work that I'm doing that became actually one of my greatest assets, was the early life experience. So yeah, that's all I would like to share. Just that, I've lived it and I've come out on the other side. And by all means, I am not perfect. But I find that it's given me a big gift to help other women.
Yeah. I had a coach say to me probably about a month ago now that what's hurt you most in life, and that thing that you thought would destroy you actually becomes your superpower. And I thought, dang, that is what happened to me. I had a traumatic divorce, and now I completely left my career and started a new career. And it's because we're so passionate about it, you and I, that we really want to help women get past it, that it does become kind of a superpower.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So first question is, why do so many people find themselves repeating a pattern in their intimate relationships?
Well, I feel based on a little bit of what I shared with my childhood experience, we repeat what we're familiar with. We repeat what we experience, this is not new information necessarily, but we repeat programming and subconscious beliefs from early life experiences. We get impressioned when we're a child. And, I work with a lot of women who didn't have outwardly an abusive childhood, but they had a parent who was a workaholic, or a parent who was consumed with, some kind of issue, or like had depression. But most of the time was there, but there's this intermittent attention or level of affection. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. And a lot of people, I think the statistic is like 86% of US adults, both men and women, have at least one ACE score, like one adverse childhood experience. So 90% of the people you're going to run into have some type of experience in their childhood that caused them pain. And so we tend to get drawn into relationships, friendships, work environments, work relationships, where that familiarity is there, where maybe sometimes the love is there, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. Freud called that repetition, what was it? Repetition through compulsion, like where we're trying to repair something that happened in our childhood. And this goes back to like your subconscious programming. So and as a child, like a lot of this happens between the ages of 2 and 7 or 2 and 9, and your brain waves are not fully, they're not, they're slower brain waves. They're like in a theta brainwave state, where this is what hypnotists put people under when they're trying to give them new suggestions. Changes. Yeah. So when you're in that slower brainwave state, you don't know anything different. Like it just comes in, and you don't have an executive functioning developed in your brain yet to discern what's right or what's wrong. And a lot of people, and I'll speak from my personal experience, like if they had a parent who was there and then not, or there and then not, tend to make the meaning that they did something wrong. They aren't aware of it or necessarily fully conscious of that meaning. But then that plays out as they become an adult into a pattern of overcompensating for that feeling of there must be something wrong with me. And they overcompensate by being an overfunctioner, being a high achiever, being an overachiever, always being like the fixer in her friendships or in her relationships. And kind of being turned on by a challenge and like this mission to like help somebody see their potential. And what happens,
describing Kelly.
what happens, ironically, is that these women will ultimately have the most attraction and the most spark and the most chemistry with somebody who mirrors more closely what they experienced in their childhood. So I work with a lot of women who felt like their narcissistic ex was their soulmate. They were convinced. Sure, there were red flags. Sure, there were red flags like from date number 1, but they thought that they could overcome that and let me be the person that breaks this person's pattern in love. Let me show them how love can really be. And we get this like false sense of security by wanting to be that woman who's different. So yeah, in childhood trauma, especially, it doesn't need to be like big T trauma, but even little t trauma can impression somebody's brain to be wired to be a little bit more prone to addictive behavior. And these relationships that are up and down and up and down have a very powerful component of intermittent reinforcement, which is the same behavior component in a drug addict or in an alcoholic. They feel good, and they crash, and then they come down, and there go the fireworks. I don't know how to turn off my
That's
Zoom.
funny.
So yeah, the pattern, we repeat these patterns because we have impressions. In the yoga tradition, they call these samskaras. So like the yoga science, thousands and thousands of years ago, if you read like yoga texts and textbooks, it was literally reading a psychology 101 book. A lot of people think yoga is about, let me do triangle pose or let me be flexible. It was all about, why are we repeating these patterns? Why do we suffer so much? Why do we come up against these challenges? And a lot of that is impressions that you receive in childhood.
Yeah, so you're kind of chasing the unavailable person because your parent or something that happened was, that person was unavailable, or I totally get that. And I am fascinated how yoga plays into that. I want to ask you, because one of the things that I teach in my group coaching and on my one-on-one, I always start with self-love. Because until you realize that you have a problem saying I love you to the person in the mirror, you don't have a base on which to start changing your life. You have to realize, do I love myself? Do I have a healthy relationship with myself? And so I feel like many people don't start there. And I'm not saying you got to, okay, all of a sudden you can look in the mirror and say, I love you. It's just knowing that there's a situation, that the trauma-informed situation has affected you in this way. And it never surprises me anymore that women can't do it. They can't look at themselves and say, I love you. But, what do you suggest? How do you start loving yourself? What are some of the things that you suggest to your clients that they can put into practice to begin having a healthy relationship with themselves?
Well, the first thing that I have my clients do, and would suggest to anybody, is slowing way down. Slowing down. There can be a really secondary pattern, like an offshoot of somebody's trauma, where they want to stay chronically busy or work, no boundaries, work, no boundaries, exhaustion, burnout. Get sick. Let me take a weekend off, work. And they go through this thing for years and years and years. And that's the same, work to keep a crappy marriage going, work to hope this guy changes, all of this stuff, this over functioning pattern. And under that pattern is unhealed trauma. And unhealed trauma just doesn't affect your brain. It affects your nervous system. There is a direct correlation. Your brain is shooting down signals into your bloodstream every time you have a thought of what's wrong with me. I will often have clients that will get on a tangent about an ex, and I'll just say, hang on just a second. What's going on in your body right now? And 100% of the time they're and they're not breathing and they're contracted. And every thought that you have has a direct effect on how you're feeling in your body. And what's important to know about that is that the more you think badly of yourself, you're going to feel contracted to the point where it's normal for you. I get a lot of clients that come in and they know that they're the problem. They know that they're living in fear. They know they have trust issues and they want love, but they don't know how to do it. And then we really start slowing down and they're like, oh my God, this is This
Mhm.
affects every area of my life.
Yeah.
Connected with my kids. So the biggest first step that people can do for themselves, especially if they have trauma, is learning how to slow down. One of the things I have my clients do is a silent day retreat. No phones, no media, 12 hours, no TV, no devices anywhere. If they're going to go do it in a public place, bring a card that says I'm in loving silence and have a notebook to write down requests. That's it. No, just being in yourself. Trauma makes a lot of people, both men and women, externally focused, externally out here. They're out from themselves because this is what you had to learn to navigate or survive an unstable or chaotic or turbulent childhood. You had to be externally focused and not at all concerned about what you needed. And
Mhm.
so we carry that pattern. And by slowing down, and this is where yoga comes in, you develop the opposite of that external pattern in your brain and in your body called interoceptive awareness. And interoceptive awareness turns on parts of your brain that have been asleep for many years that are designed to help you communicate better, that are designed to help you listen to your intuition and communicate what your intuition is telling you. People who are living in fight or flight, in anxiety, in burnout, and overwhelm, the areas of their brain responsible for communicating and listening to their intuition have less activity, like they're darker. And their amygdala has the most activity. And what's even more important to know about that is that the more you live in fight or flight, like working out, the bigger your amygdala gets. And so it's going to be any new information that's coming in is going to be hitting your like fear lens and like what could go wrong and your perfectionist lens. And we tend to not take effective action or make empowered choices when we're living like that. So slowing down, having some type of mindfulness based practice, somatic therapy, yoga therapy. I work with a lot of people, women who are like high achievers and they do power yoga or they do like Bikram yoga and they like work out and they're like super and they're keeping their nervous system jacked up and they don't sleep well and they're cranky and they're burnout at work and we have to slowing down your nervous system, giving yourself space to retrain how you're thinking and how you're feeling, retraining your nervous system response, widening your window of tolerance to new levels of stress so that it comes and it passes right through and you don't cling to it. And you don't like make a negative meaning about it. And then you don't shut down your dating apps and like quit dating for 5 years. Like it just goes right through. So slowing down is one of the best things that people can do as a first step. And slowing down will often bring a lot of insight that you're too busy in your world to hear or even acknowledge. Yeah.
Can you explain what somatic therapy is? Because I hear it a lot now. And so I think it's becoming more widely accepted or more widely utilized. But I also think most people around me don't know what it is. So I think it's a great opportunity to explain that.
Yeah. So somatic, the root word is soma, which means of the body. And can include interventions like yoga therapy. What is the tapping one? Emotional freedom technique. This would be
EFT, right?
be a somatic therapy intervention. Breath work is really powerful. Meditation. I use a process with my clients, a closed eye process or some type of a body scan and noticing, where they feel, how they perceive their breath in that moment. What's the life correlation? If your breath is contracted, where in your life are you contracted? So there's always as within, so without. So breath work, meditation, trauma sensitive yoga, mindful movement, EFT, massage could even count as this. I sometimes will have clients get regular massages, especially for women who haven't had any physical intimacy in their life, or they weren't physically intimate with their spouse for many, many years, or there was a block there and they feel unattractive in their bodies. They don't even pay attention to what's going on down here at all. Yeah, so those can be wonderful interventions, somatic therapy.
I love that. And I love the root word. I mean, I think that's amazing because there are so many ways to experience and kind of get out of that negative energy that's trapped in your core and your chakra. And, my friend Allison did did one of my master classes for me and explained how good energy just moves through the body. And that's when you're feeling your best. That's when you're feeling happy and healthy. And then when that bad energy is trapped inside you, that's when you've got to make a move to do some of these somatic therapies. You've got to get that bad energy moving through you.
Yeah, I will say a lot of the people that I work with are surprised by how emotional they are, especially in the first 4 weeks of our work together. Positive, they feel calmer and they feel more at ease and they feel happy and they feel like they're showing up with their kids differently and showing up to work differently and even interacting with their ex differently. But on the other side of that, there's also more of a release of emotion. And I feel like just people in general are really good at suppressing and repressing things that don't feel good and trying to get rid of that feeling as soon as possible. And that's really like the kiss of death. Because you kind of, avoidance for sure, resistance, procrastination, all these things. I mean, and what I tell my clients is that if you're avoiding your own feelings, you're essentially emotionally unavailable yourself.
Yes.
And if you're teaching, if that's how you are and you're teaching and you're showing up that way with your kids and you're hiding how you're feeling, you're subtly telling them, maybe indirectly, that it's okay for them to hide how they're feeling. And a lot of the women that I work with feel like their kids don't share what's really going on because they're afraid of burdening her because they already know that she's burdened emotionally. So,
that's where then you're starting the cycle, and you don't want that cycle for your children. Any mother would not want to do that. And so the recognition of the pattern, which is kind of where we started today, is so important. And the pattern that you don't love yourself, are you teaching that to your kids? The pattern that you won't open up, are you teaching that to your kids? The pattern of being with unavailable people, you're teaching them to be unavailable. And so I think the pattern thing is just crazy. So let's take the pattern thing to dating.
yeah.
Now, my book, The Swipe Right Effect, is not necessarily about dating. I waited till chapter 12, the last chapter, to talk about dating, but I do talk about some of the things I found out about myself while I was dating. And it really was informative to kind of how I went. And I was pretty fearless on the dating because I had been in a kind of a suppressed marriage for 6 years. He was being unfaithful and I didn't know. But of course, everything was imploding inside the marriage because of the cheating. And so I was just so ready to be out of that. And I jumped in way before I was ready. And so that's why I wanted to write that book, to pay it forward, all the advice that was given to me that helped me get through all of that crazy, crazy transition time, because I wasn't ready. And so the swipe right effect is to choose yourself, to swipe right for yourself. And the effect of that is to be somebody who's actually dateable. So, let's see. Why does typical dating advice fall short when someone repeatedly attracts unavailable men?
Well, I feel like a lot of the dating advice out there from other experts focuses either on a specific situation, like getting ghosted, or how to decipher a man's behavior when you've only had 5 dates with him, and how to read the tea leaves and all of that stuff, and like, what is he doing? And it seems to be focused more outwardly out here. And I feel like that's valuable for sure, because we all get into situations where like, I don't know, should I, shouldn't I? And so we kind of get into this muddy space, and having that information can be helpful. But I feel like if you're a woman who chronically attracts unavailable men, or who is also a yes person and can't say no, or feels bad for saying no, or fears dating because she doesn't trust herself, modern day dating advice isn't going to be much help for you, because it's going to be focused on like surface level, in my opinion, stuff, scenarios, situations, and that will take you a certain distance. But if you want to go all the way to the finish line and win the race, like you said, you have to become somebody who is dateable. You have to become what you're looking for. I will have, people enroll and think that this is a how to meet Mr. Right program. And it is absolutely not that. And they're kind of shocked because we don't talk about dating until like the very end.
Yeah.
And like all of it is about like how cleaning up your own lane, having like cleaning up your energy, cleaning up your boundaries, looking at how you're draining yourself through these trauma-based patterns, and learning how to emotionally regulate. So I feel like it is better if you know that you have this pattern, and you know that you are prone to fixing partners, being more attracted to unavailable partners, being unattracted to normal, securely attached people. That feels weird, and like, I don't feel a spark with these people. It would be better for you to work on healing your relational trauma and digging a little deeper under the hood. And a lot of the people that I work with and have spoken with, have done a lot of traditional talk therapy, and we'll talk about it, and we'll talk about it, and we'll talk about it. And I think that's good initially. I think that's a good first base. We're like shining the light. What's really going on? Oh, this came from your childhood. Oh, this is why you're doing this, blah, 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 blah. We like start piece, and then we're like, oh, okay, great. I'm never going to do it again. And then like 5 years later, I did it again, and it's even worse. So like, when I see people, and I did that personally, and, many of my clients have done that as well, did all the right things to heal. It's really not about dating or doing dating right. It is about healing the things in you that cause you to self-sabotage, ignore red flags. Ignoring red flags is like oftentimes linked back to a fight, flight, or freeze response, or fawning, right? This is a difficult situation that I'm presented with. My gut is telling me it's not right, but I don't want to rock the boat, so I'm going to do something else.
I like the fawning. I had not heard that before.
Fawning is huge. It's the fourth one, and it's extremely important. People pleasing.
Yeah.
It's a form of manipulation. And a lot of the women that, I work with, they've been in narcissistic relationships. And if you're a codependents are huge on people pleasing, like if you're people please, we attract what we are. Water seeks its own level. We attract a complementary. If we have trauma, we're going to attract a complementary match to our level of trauma, period. End of story. There's no way around that.
That's interesting. Yeah. And I did, I don't know if you've heard of this course, but it's by Catherine Woodward Thomas, and it's called Calling in the One.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a 7-week course, 49 straight days, just like 10 minutes a day. But does she get to the heart of the matter. And I took that while I was writing my book. So it was really interesting how I was changing, even though, I was writing this book, I was still changing. And I think it's incredibly important to be open to that and to always want to be learning, always be seeking more information. But you said something that totally aligned with how she ends her course, which is she says, write down every word, every adjective, every word of what you want in someone. Just make this huge list, keep going as long as you want. And then she says, now take it down to 20. And then she'd take it down to 5. And then the end of the course is now go be those 5 things.
Yes. Yes.
So I think as I dated people, I learned what I did and didn't want. And so people like, I would go out on a date with a guy and he would say, don't you just hate dating? And I'd be like, no, I think it's amazing because I'm learning about myself and I'm learning about other people. I'm learning what I want and what I don't want. And that answer usually created a great conversation. If it didn't, this is what I don't want.
Yes.
So I think that, being positive about dating is actually really important. If you're going to bother to put the time in, you need to show up. But I loved that. Be the 5 things that you want most in a partner. And I learned to do that, to be that, to learn to be somebody who's calmer and not afraid to say, actually, I don't agree with that, because the old me would have said, oh, interesting. And I wouldn't have disagreed. But how do they know me if I don't let them know me? And that's what people pleasing is not really letting people know you and what you like and don't like and how you feel, or, maybe you don't show that you feel. So I love that. And you totally hit it, but I wanted to bring up that progression of getting down to 5 things. I think it's really important. And do you have advice? Because you said you have clients who kind of have this repetitive behavior, and we all have patterns, but how do you believe in love again when you've kind of been hurt or maybe you've been in a narcissistic relationship? How do you bring yourself to trust again?
I think the biggest first step is forgiveness. And forgiving yourself and forgiving your ex and forgiving any exes that came before. Most of the women that I serve don't do that, or they'll give it lip service, but they don't really emotionally forgive. They don't really let go. And I think it's going to be really, really hard if you are still being a victim. It's going to be extremely hard. Because love is the highest emotional energy on the scale, and victimhood is the lowest. And living. And so if you are still talking about what your ex did to you, if you're still thinking about what your ex did to you, if you're still feeling the tape in your mind is still telling you every day, constantly, what's wrong with me? Why do my coworkers have great marriages and I don't? Why do I go to my kids' PTA meeting and I'm the only single mom there? Like, if that's the story you are telling yourself, it's going to be really hard to believe in love, because essentially you're beating yourself up. So I think forgiveness is extremely critical work and has to be a part of the process, the healing process. Everybody that I talk to, whether they're like, I'm never going to date again, when we like break the ice a little bit, like everybody that I talk to wants that in their life. They want to share their life with somebody. They want the white picket fence. They want that. And I don't know if that's culturally because, we have Cinderella and these fairy tales, and we grew up with these things, and we grew up with this like modeling and conditioning, like you grow up and you get married and like that's socially ingrained in us as a culture. But I think beyond that, a human experience is that most people want that. They are just afraid of failing. And in my experience, they're really afraid of having it, because if they really, really have it and they have past abandonment stuff, having somebody really, really see them can be threatening to their abandonment wounds and their abandonment triggers, and that will create some self-sabotage patterns. But learning to forgive, number one, deciding that you are tired of coping with your shame and your victimhood and your loneliness in unhealthy ways. Being a workaholic is not going to save you. It'll keep you busy, it'll keep you distracted, but it's not going to bring you happiness. And truly deciding that you're ready to make change. I think there's I'm forgetting the author. Shoot. There's a quote, I'm going to butcher it, but he said something along the lines of like, there's something powerful in making a decision, that when you make the decision to go for what you really, really want, that providence moves to certain things start coming into your life to support your decision to change. And I think there is power in making the decision to go after your dream. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't do that. They sell themselves on why it's safer to stay stuck and stay in their warm cocoon of safety.
Right. Right. And on day 5 of my self-care challenge, and you can find all those on my YouTube channel, but it is to create a habit of forgiveness, because self-care has to be about, you have to do self-care in relationships. And I did after all the, crap hit the fan with my marriage and the cheating came out and all of this stuff happened. I went and did a 500-mile hike in Spain called the Camino de Santiago. And when I came back, everybody's like, what'd you learn? What'd you learn? It's like, well, I began the process of forgiveness, and I realized I have to work at it every single day, that I can't just decide I forgive him and it's all gone, because all of the stories in your head.
Right.
There were a lot of things that I unfortunately began to believe about myself as a result of the gaslighting and all of that every time I confronted one of those, it became victim mentality and it was his fault and I had to forgive him all over again. And then I realized that I was probably most mad at myself. And so when people would ask me that, what did you learn on your 500 miles? I would say I started the process of forgiving him and I learned how to forgive myself. I forgave myself for having a failed marriage. I forgave myself for sticking around for 6 years when I felt unloved, all of these things that I was so mad at myself about, but I didn't even realize it until I had that time to think about it. So I do think forgiveness needs to be habit, because it doesn't happen in one sitting or
Right. Absolutely.
it's a practice. And I think, are you familiar? I'm sure you are, because you're a yogi and all of that, but the Ho'oponopono prayer.
Yes, I use that in my work.
Yes, I do too. And I think and that's one of the most powerful experiences at our retreats is the Ho'oponopono prayer. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And when I couldn't get out of victim mentality, I made myself say that every morning before I got out of bed 10 times. I'd sit there and say it and I count on my fingers, because I had to forgive myself and I had to forgive them, the people who had hurt me. And so, anyway, yeah, I just think thank you for bringing up forgiveness. And I think that's a beautiful place to stop.
Absolutely.
How can people reach you, Bethany? I mean, you obviously have so much to offer. How can people learn more from you?
Thank you. They can, so I have a free training, my free masterclass, Break the Cycle, which is kind of a precursor into how I help clients achieve results. It's like a high level bird's eye overview. So that's available at bethanydotson.com. It's on the homepage, but the direct link is bethanydotson.com/masterclass. I also have a podcast myself, although I'm in pre-production for season 3, but I have season 1 and 2 up. That's available. Break the Cycle with Bethany Dotson on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and then on most social media platforms, YouTube, Instagram. Yeah.
Awesome. Breaking the Cycle with Bethany Dotson is the podcast.
Break the Cycle with Bethany Dotson.
Break the Cycle. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. I learned a lot, and we're definitely aligned. So I love, I love that we're both helping women, passionate about that, and that it comes from a place that hurt us, but became our superpower. I love it. Thanks again, Bethany.
Yeah.
Wow. Wasn't Bethany great? Wow. So I wanted to take a minute and let you know about a program I have called the Momentum Effect. It is a 4-month program, and it begins with a 3-day retreat where a circle of women, 10 to 12 women, come together, and we do visioning, we do energy work, and it's just an incredible experience. And I have one coming up April 11th through 14th, 2024. And you can find out about that at ckcollins.co/momentum retreat. And so there's a retreat, and then there's also a continuation of that if you so choose. That is a 3-month session, June, July, and August, where those same women, that same circle of women, come together, and we do a masterclass each month and a mastermind each month. And everybody gets one-on-one coaching with me. And I've just got an amazing lineup of masterclass teachers. So I wanted to make sure I let you know about that. And you can find that again at ckcollins.co/momentum. Or if you just are interested in the retreat, /momentum retreat. So I appreciate you tuning in today, and I thank you very much for your attention. I'm sure you got something out of it because Bethany was amazing. So have a great day, everybody. I'll see you next week.
Kelly's book is available on Amazon and through your local bookstores. Look for the Swipe Right Effect, the power to get unstuck. Kelly's interviews with 10 friends from around the world unlock powerful truths to getting your new life started.